So my favorite class at USC in undergrad was called Entrepreneurship, taught by Paul Orfalea. And technically, I was not allowed to be in that class. It had required coursework where you had to go through Marshall School of Business and have certain GPA, none of which I had. And I really wanted to take the class. So I decided to get in line amongst the other students who had correctly registered and met all the criteria to be able to get into that course and try to see if I could sneak in and convince him to add me. Well, he proceeded, Paul Orfalea, to make students stand in line before they entered the room to greet him. And he said, if you don't do it right, you're going to be kicked out and you won't be allowed in the class. And so student after student in front of me greeted Paul Orfalea and failed. He said, that doesn't cut it, get to the back of the line. You only get to go through 3 times, otherwise you're cut from the class. And so it came to me and I was nervous because I had seen 8 other students in front of me completely get rejected. And I went through the process of reaching out my hand, staring him in the eye, and just grinning like a goofball, so excited to be like meeting him because he had started Kinkos. He had started that company that is now all over the world, purchased by FedEx. And so I obviously respected him and wanted to meet him and be in this class to just hear from his wisdom and learn. So I was pumped and I got a little cheesy and just, hey, Paul, it's so great to meet you. I really want to be admitted to this class and I just can't wait to rock it this year. And I guess I was the most enthusiastic student that he had met to date. And so he allowed me into the class. And at the very end of the course, like when, everyone else started copying my example. And so by the end of the class, I had to go up to the TA and say like, hey, I don't have any of their criteria. And the student TA looked at me and just was almost disgusted. I can't believe that you didn't do all the criteria. And Paul just said, she did what she needed to do. Let's let her into the class. And that was such a great lesson for me because it taught what really does it take for you to succeed in business, not just in school. School often teaches you to learn and study the rubric to meet certain criteria that are predetermined by someone else to measure success. And there's a groupthink thing that has to happen for schools to be successful and to run. And so there's an art form in learning to understand and beat that rubric. So that's an important lesson. I'm not saying that's bad to go to school and to learn how to meet someone else's standards. But at the same time, I thought it was amazing that USC also taught me how to break those rules and when it's okay to break those rules. If you put yourself out there and use charisma and seek the things that you're actually desiring in your life, which I wanted to learn entrepreneurship. I wanted to be in the circles of the great people in the world who had actually accomplished something so that I could possibly glean and become like that. That experience taught me that was really important. And Paul recognized that and he tried throughout the entire course that he taught to break standards and expectations and cause students to get uncomfortable in class. He would give us the craziest homework assignments to force us to go be wild and crazy and do something that was outside of our comfort zone to learn that it takes a lot to win. You got to put yourself out there and be courageous and bold and creative. So I love that class and I thought that was a great life lesson for anyone who's in the midst of being an entrepreneur and kind of weighed down from the pressures of a struggling economy, building a business from scratch, providing for your family. I think those lessons are very applicable to today because in the midst of a world that's changing or uncertain, in the midst of pressure, there is something very forceful about knowing what you want and capturing the charisma inside of you to push yourself into the sphere of other people who could change your world. Whether that's finding the energy and charisma to seek out and befriend new potential customers, whether that is befriending and seeking out relationships with new factory vendors that could maybe manufacture your product and would negotiate fresh terms with you so that you could actually get your business going, whether that's raising money with someone else who has the capital to make your business a success, even in the midst of a challenging downturn in the economy. It's those skills which are the resources of charisma and creativity, of putting yourself out there, that have a lot to do with just internal personality. It's not intelligence that got me into that class. I actually had bad grades. It was just sheer charisma and enthusiasm and the desire. I definitely showed that I was hungry. And I was a goofy kid at the time. I didn't have any business or professional experience. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. So it wasn't on the basis even of pedigree. I'm not saying charisma equals pedigree. I think it's the desire that I wanted that thing, and I was willing to put out the energy to try to convince that person that I was worthy of being in that class. And I still use those skill sets when I'm raising clients, when I'm trying to pursue anything that I want to do in my business. And so, but I also get bogged down. Sometimes I get discouraged, or I get confused about the direction of my business when something crashes or goes wrong, or a client, I've got to go fix a problem for them. Everybody goes through a moment where you get confused. And I had gone through that with the quarantine. I had definitely at least a full week of just sitting here wondering if the world was going to end, and trying to rally my brain into getting clarity about what I needed to do. And so just remembering stories like that where in the past I've been successful, or remembering what elements it took for me to succeed in the midst of something that I wanted to pivot my life, that just remembering those types of stories are what got me back into the headspace of remembering, what worked in the past is going to work again today, in terms of that internal resource of charisma and identifying what I want. And so in the midst of this season, with the economy being weird, it just means I need to pivot, use my brain to pivot, but use that same charisma to make it happen. I hope that's encouraging to you, because if you're stuck, reach deep. Remember those moments of your success when your charisma has been the thing to push you forward. Those clients are still out there wanting to buy your product. There is money out there to support your business if you have the right pitch and you find the right people and you push yourself, your charisma into it. I hope that encourages you today to go out and do whatever it is that you need to do. And if you want to hear more about my crazy stories, you should subscribe to my YouTube channel or my e-newsletter, where I share stories about entrepreneurship, as well as advice and tips for developing your business and making it grow.